Greetings to the tennis faithful, tuning in from the Philippines, the Czech Republic, and every remote outpost of the sporting world. Welcome back. If you rolled out of bed this morning anticipating a victory lap, or logged on expecting to witness the glorious next chapter of Asian tennis history, you are likely sitting there in stunned silence. We are staring down the barrel of a result that has sent absolute shockwaves through the global tennis community. This outcome has violently slammed the brakes on the momentum of one of the tour's most electrifying young phenoms. The news is stark, it is jagged, and for the millions of supporters standing behind the pride of the Philippines, it is an incredibly bitter pill to swallow. Doha has been turned upside down as Eala clashes with her personal kryptonite, Tereza Valentová. That is the narrative burning up the news feeds right now. But headlines are superficial. They give you the what, but they fail to explain the how, and they completely miss the why. And they certainly can't convey the brutal war of attrition we just watched unfold on the hard courts of Doha. So let's set the scene properly because context is everything. We are live at the Qatar Total Energies Open, a WTA 1000 event, the big leagues, where the best of the best come to play. This is the first massive 1,000-level pit stop of the 2026 season, meaning the stakes are astronomical and the pressure is crushing. On one side of the net stands Eala, the golden girl, the lefty assassin. She marched onto that court in Doha not merely as a hopeful contender, but as a bona fide history maker, just hours before the first serve was struck. The fresh WTA rankings were released, and there she was, Eala, world number 40. Let that reality sink in for a moment. She is the first Filipina to ever smash into the top 40, coming off a scorching run in Abu Dhabi, where a quarterfinal finish proved she can trade blows with the elite. She arrived riding a tidal wave of confidence that felt unstoppable. Facing her was the kryptonite, the Czech prodigy Tereza Valentová, 18 years old, and the latest weapon from that terrifyingly efficient Czech tennis factory that manufactures Grand Slam champions like clockwork. Valentová is not simply an adversary. She is evolving into a nemesis, a brick wall, a complex riddle that Eala, despite her brilliance and grit, cannot seem to crack. And tonight, under the blinding floodlights of the Khalifa International Tennis and Squash Complex, these two unstoppable forces crashed into each other. The aftermath is a gut-wrenching, exhausting, and ultimately stunning departure for the newly minted world number 40. The scoreboard reads 7-6. 6-1 in favor of Valentová. But listen to me, that score is a liar. It tells you nothing of the blood, sweat, and thunder of that opening set or the attempted comeback. It ignores the fighting spirit, the refusal to surrender that Eala displayed even when her back was against the wall. We witnessed a tiebreak that felt like it dragged on for an eternity, watching set points materialize and vanish into thin air. We saw the anguish of missed chances collide with the ruthless, surgical precision of a Czech teenager with ice water in her veins. So why is this such a shock? It is shocking because Eala was primed, she was playing peak tennis, she held the higher ranking, and she owned the momentum. Yet, she ran straight into a buzzsaw. This wasn't just a defeat. It was a declaration by Valentová that the battle for the next generation is going to be vicious. It is a harsh reminder that rankings offer zero protection once that yellow ball is in play. So where did it go wrong? How did a celebration of a top 40 milestone spiral into a desert nightmare? And why has Tereza Valentová become the one puzzle Eala cannot solve? Was it physical exhaustion? A tactical breakdown? Or are we witnessing the birth of a rivalry that will define women's tennis for the next 10 years? We are going to dissect this match point by agonizing point, game by game. We are diving deep into the mechanics of the serve, the psychological warfare of the tiebreak, and the physical unraveling in the second set. Strap yourselves in, because this isn't just a match summary. This is the anatomy of a heartbreak and a deep dive into the gravity of this defeat. We need to rewind the tape and understand the atmosphere hanging thick over Doha before a single ball was even hit. It is February 2026, and the tennis calendar is catching fire. We have left the Australian swing behind, and the tour has touched down in the Middle East, where the Qatar Open is notorious for its difficulty. The courts are fast, the wind is treacherous, and the bracket is always stacked. It is a merciless arena. Yet for Alex, this was supposed to be her victory lap. Let's talk about her trajectory. because the last 12 months for the young Filipina have been nothing short of a movie script. She closed out 2025 with power and stormed into 2026 with a vengeance. Just last week in Abu Dhabi, she wasn't just showing up, she was taking over, toppling giants and storming her way to the quarterfinals. And because of that dominance, when the WTA algorithms crunched the data on Monday morning, Alex sat proudly at number 40 in the world. Do you realize how grueling that is? Leaping from the top 100 to the top 50 is the single hardest jump in professional tennis. That range is a graveyard for prospects where players stall out at 70 or 80. But Eala didn't just cross that line, she smashed right through it. She walked into the venue in Doha with a target painted on her back. She was no longer the underdog story, she was the favorite. She walked in with a seed next to her name and a storm of hype at her back. Everyone asked the same thing. Is this her moment to tear through a Masters 1000? The pressure weighed more than her gear, and luck was in a nasty mood. No soft landings, no warm-up matches against a qualifier to find her rhythm. She didn't get a fading legend running on fumes. She got the nightmare scenario. She got Valentová. Casual watchers might scratch their heads at that name, but real heads know. And Alex Eala definitely knows. Tereza Valentová is 18 and dangerous. She represents the frightening next generation of Czech dominance. Just look at the bloodline. Navratilova, Menlikova, Novotná, Kvitova, Pliskova, Krejcikova, Vondrousova. That country is a factory for pure strikers. They build machines that hit the ball clean, dead flat, and absolutely crushing. Valentová is the newest lethal prototype rolling out of the shop. We are talking about the 2024 French Open Junior Champion. She swept singles and doubles. She has the resume, the firepower, and most importantly, she has bad blood with Eala. Flashback to late 2025, the Japan Women's Open in Osaka. You want to know how that went down? It was a massacre. 6-1, 6-2. A total demolition. So when Eala saw that name on the Doha bracket, she understood the assignment instantly. This wasn't just an opener. It was an exorcism. A litmus test for her top 40 ranking. The question hung in the air. Could she do it? Could she take down the girl who humiliated her in Japan and prove her evolution? The script was written, the Avenger against the Nemesis, the lefty against the powerhouse. The first ball was struck, and the air instantly grew heavy with tension. Nerves were vibrating off both of them. Two young killers, starving for the win, fully aware of what was on the line. Inside the Khalifa International Complex, the seats were thin, but the noise was loud, and as usual, it was tilting heavily in Eala's favor. The Filipino faithful showed up in force, ready to lift her up. Valentová? She couldn't care less. She came out throwing haymakers. Disaster struck immediately. The Czech teenager looked sharper than a razor and broke Eala's serve right out of the gate. 2-love down in a blink. It felt like the Osaka nightmare on repeat. You could feel the dread ripple through the stands. Is this another slaughter? Was she exhausted from Abu Dhabi? Maybe. But this is the moment where the new, evolved Alexandra Eala stepped into the light. Call it the Pumalag factor. In Tagalog, it means you don't roll over. You resist. You fight back. You refuse to be a victim. And that is exactly what she did. No panic, just adjustment. Valentova's game is a sledgehammer, massive serve, punishing forehand. She wants to be the boss. If you let her plant her feet on the baseline and swing freely, you are dead. Eala realized she couldn't win a slugfest. She had to be smarter. She unlocked that lefty spin, carving out crazy angles and moving the pieces around the board. She dragged the Czech girl into deep waters. She broke back. From 0 to 2 down, the crowd absolutely exploded. 2-all, 3-all. 4-all. This was elite warfare. We are talking 15, 20-shot rallies that burned the lungs. Eala was everywhere, scrambling, digging, and flipping defense into offense with that signature whipped forehand down the paint. Valentová kept bombing serves and painting the lines, refusing to blink. The pressure cooker hit maximum temperature at 5 games apiece. This is the kill zone. Eala held her nerve and her serve to inch ahead 6-5. The weight of the world shifted to the 18-year-old Czech. Hold, serve, or go home. One double fault. One tight error, and the set belongs to Eala. But Valentová was ice cold. She held for 6-all. We are heading to a tiebreak. The tiebreak of agony. They call it a lottery, but they are wrong. It is a staring contest, with guns drawn. Who flinches first? Those final points were a perfect microcosm of the war. Eala would rip a winner. Valentova would clap back with an ace. Eala forced a mistake. Valentova clipped the line. It was razor thin. 3-all, 4-all, 5-all. Then the door opened. Eala led 6-5. Set point. It was right there. 1 point from the set. 1 point from proving she belongs. 1 point from shattering the mental stranglehold Valentova had on her throat. What happened next is the stuff of nightmares for her coaching team. Valentova tossed the ball for the serve. It was gutsy. Eala got the racket on it, but the return sat up short. Valentova stepped in and absolutely crushed the forehand. 6-all. Set point erased. The momentum swung so hard you could practically hear the wind snap. At 6 apiece, Valentova unleashed a brilliant attack, forcing Eala to overshoot. 7-6. Now the Czech held the knife. Eala served. The rally went long, the tension thick enough to choke on. She tried to change the angle. She went for glory and missed the mark. Tiebreak to Valentova, 8-6. Over 60 minutes of brutal, physical violence wrapped up in one set. And Eala walked to the chair with absolutely nothing to show for it. She played well. She clawed back from the brink. She had the set on her racket, and she lost. That kind of defeat doesn't just hurt, it damages the soul. It drains the legs. More than that, it drains the spirit. To bleed that much, to be that close, and have it snatched away by the kid across the net, that is a devastating psychological knockout. We talk about momentum in sports like it is just a buzzword, but in tennis, it is a living, breathing, physical force. The moment that second set kicked off, the atmosphere completely abandoned Team Eala, and you could read the defeat written all over her posture. Her shoulders slumped just a little lower, and her footwork lost that razor-sharp snap, trailing a fatal fraction of a second behind. The spark in her eyes had been extinguished by the crushing weight of that first-set tiebreaker, while Tereza Valentová circled like a shark sensing blood in the water. This is exactly why Valentová is such a nightmare matchup. Most rookies would take a breath and coast after snatching such a nail-biter. They might suffer a momentary letdown, but not her. She slammed the pedal to the metal, and that 4-0 blitz happened faster than you could blink. Game 1, Valentová holds firm. Game 2, Eala cracks and gets broken as errors pile up. Game 3, an effortless hold for Tereza. Aces were raining down, and by Game 4, Eala was broken again, just like magic. The scoreboard screamed 4-0. The gritty battle from the first set had vanished into thin air, and the fierce resistance was dead and buried. She wasn't just losing anymore. She was being systematically taken apart, and the numbers tell the tragedy. In the second frame, Eala's first serve percentage fell off a cliff. When the legs get heavy, the serve is the first casualty, and suddenly, she wasn't getting any free points to bail her out. She was forced to grind for every single scrap, and lobbing 80-mile-per-hour second serves at a sledgehammer like Valentová is a death sentence. Valentová stepped right inside the baseline, robbing her of time and blasting returns deep into the corners with ruthless precision. She made the court feel miles wide for Eala and suffocatingly small for herself, until finally, at 0-4, Eala scraped together a lonely hold. 4-1, and a ripple of polite applause floated down a ghost of hope, perhaps, but Valentová slammed the door shut immediately. She cruised to 5-1, and in that final game, serving for glory, the fight had simply evaporated from Eala's spirit. One last unforced error sealed the deal. Game, set, and match to Tereza Valentová, 7-6, 6-1. We have the emotional narrative, but let's drill down into the cold, hard math of why this loss happened, starting with the serve disparity. That is the headline of the night. Tereza Valentová converted 75% of the points behind her first delivery. Alex Eala sat at a measly 55%, and that 20% gap is not just a difference in pro tennis, it is an entire ocean. Valentová hammered down 4 aces, while Eala couldn't find a single one to shift the momentum when it mattered most. When Valentová needed a lifeline, she painted a line and got a sitter. When Eala needed one, she had to survive a 10-shot war of attrition. That kind of physical tax breaks a player down, forcing Eala to burn twice the fuel just to stay level on the scoreboard. Point 2 is the clutch factor in the tiebreak. Valentová played with ice in her veins, swinging for the fences, while Eala hesitated. Fortune favors the bold. And at 6-5 in the breaker, Valentová didn't ask for permission. She took the racket right out of Eala's hands. She didn't wait for a mistake. She forced the issue. And that is exactly what separates a top 50 journeywoman from a top 10 superstar. Eala may be top 40, but to climb higher, she needs that assassin's instinct on set point, which brings us to point 3, the matchup nightmare. Why is she kryptonite? Eala is a southpaw who thrives on dictating play with heavy, looping topspin and sharp angles. She loves to drag her opponents around the court, but Valentová is a flat hitter who strikes straight and true. She keeps the ball low and fast, so when Eala throws that heavy spin, it bounces up right into the Czech girl's strike zone. Valentová doesn't fear the spin. She steps in, leans on it, and redirects the pace, backed by a backhand that is absolute granite. Ayala's bread and butter, play the lefty cross-court into the backhand, doesn't even dent Valentova's armor. She soaks up the pressure and lasers it back down the line, creating a stylistic disaster for Alex. She is locked in combat with a mirror reflection of her own raw power, a force she simply does not have the strength to shatter right now. We have to rip the bandage off and examine exactly why this defeat cuts so deep. If Eala were languishing at rank 150 and fell to a surging prodigy, we would just shrug and say, she is seeded caliber now, and with that ranking comes the expectation that you put away the 18-year-old wildcards. You are supposed to survive these gritty opening rounds, so this loss burns because it serves as a brutal reality check. It feels like the tour is whispering, congratulations on the ranking, Alex, but you haven't truly made it yet. And we cannot ignore the exhaustion factor. Eala left everything on the court in Abu Dhabi, going deep into the week. She fought high-intensity battles against top 10 giants, then barely had a moment to travel to Doha and reset her clock. The WTA grind is unforgiving, and stringing together elite performances week after week is a skill all its own. That physical collapse in the second set, that 6-1 drubbing, is almost certainly the result of an emotional and physical hangover. She emptied the tank to reach the top 40 and ran on fumes against Valentová, but we must give respect where it is due. We cannot just focus on Eala's defeat. We must acknowledge that Tereza Valentová is the real deal. Remember, she was a finalist at the US Open Juniors in 2023 and snatched the French Open Junior crown in 2024. She is making the leap to the pros look effortless, and dismantling a talent like Eala, 6-1 in the second, requires absolute, laser-focused precision. Her service game was absolutely thunderous. For an athlete packing that much firepower, her agility was defying physics, and her mindset was bulletproof. The composure she displayed to erase that set point in the breaker revealed the steel of a seasoned veteran. Alex Eala hasn't just found an opponent. She has discovered a career-defining nemesis. We are destined to witness this clash 10, perhaps 20 times over the coming decade. Yet, the current tally stands as a cold, hard Valentová, 2-0. That is a strategic riddle that Alex and the masterminds at the Rafa Nadal Academy simply must decipher. Because Valentová is not a fleeting shadow, she is here to stay and will only sharpen her skills. So what is the takeaway as the silence descends on Doha? The spectators are filtering out, and Alex Eala is exiting the tournament far sooner than anticipated. Glancing at that 6-1 second set, it is tempting to sink into gloom. It is natural to read the alarming, bold text and imagine the world collapsing. But let us pause, inhale deeply, and survey the broader landscape. Even with this defeat and the stinging agony of that tiebreaker, Alexandra Eala remains the 40th best player on the planet. That hard-earned status does not evaporate into thin air because of a single rough evening under the lights in Qatar. This is the same 20-year-old prodigy who recently toppled top 10 giants in Abu Dhabi. She remains the jewel of Southeast Asia. And in tennis, amnesia is a virtue. Defeat arrives on Monday, the training court calls on Tuesday, you jet off on Wednesday, and the battle resumes the following week. The circuit pauses for no one's sorrow. This showdown with Tereza Valentová served as a tutorial, a savage, agonizing masterclass. It demonstrated that a number next to your name offers no shield. It screamed that she requires a secondary strategy when facing relentless flat ball strikers. It highlighted a critical need to boost those first serve numbers if she hopes to withstand the barrage from these Czech dynamos. The vulnerability has been exposed. Now we must ask, can our hero engineer a solution to neutralize it? There is zero question in my mind that Eala is already dissecting every frame of this encounter. Her squad is undoubtedly scrutinizing serve spots, return stances, and tiebreak decisions. Unyielding grit is woven into her very genetic code. She clawed her way back from a 0-2 deficit today, and she will claw her way back from this defeat. The calendar is fresh. It is merely February. The Sunshine, Double Indian Wells, and Miami awaits us, followed by the clay court swing, Eala's beloved terrain, looming just ahead. Refuse the urge to discount her. Do not allow a solitary stumble in Doha to eclipse the meteoric ascent we are privileged to watch. Valentová claimed the skirmish today. She was superior and earned the victory. However, the greater campaign, that is only just commencing. The temperature of this feud is rising, and the next time they lock horns, be it Paris, London, or New York, you can wager everything that Alex will be prepared. She will bottle the bitterness of this result. She will recall that 6-1 drubbing and incinerate it for motivation. At this moment, the story is one of surprise, but shortly, very shortly, the banner will read Redemption. I appreciate you tuning in for this comprehensive breakdown. It is a bitter evening for the Eala faithful, but keep your chins elevated. The path to the summit is never a straight arrow. It is a jagged range of mountains, and we are merely scaling the next crag.